Welcome to the Senate E12 Committee. Today is February 4th, 2019. We do have a quorum. Today, members, we're going to hear 5 bills. The first bill is by Senator Goggin, Senate File 15. Senator Goggin, if you could come to... Oh. We'll continue with Senator Goggin. I'm sorry, it looks like there was an order change that I didn't see, so I apologize. Senator Goggin, welcome to the committee. If you could introduce yourself for the tape, and I would be glad to move Senate File 15.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. I'm Senator Mike Goggin, and today I'm presenting Senate File 15. And this bill, what it does is it just adds a little clarification and opportunity for our post-secondary schools to encourage and provide the opportunity for their students to hear about military careers and also careers in the skilled trades. And with that, I'll take any questions that anybody might have, but that's the gist of the bill. Just providing our students a lot of options, and you know, the military is a great opportunity for kids looking for a way to make some money and find some skills. And then the skilled trades, we can never have enough skilled tradespeople. So,
thank you, Senator Goggin. And just as a reminder, this was passed last year in the supplemental bill. Unfortunately, it received that veto, not just that, but the whole bill. Senator Goggin, do you have an amendment?
No, I do not. No amendments.
Okay. Members, do you have any questions for Senator Goggin? I know you've heard this before. Then if there are no other questions, is there any other testimony for or against the bill? We'll take pro-testimony first and then those who are against. Are there any testifiers who wish to testify in favor of the bill? Are there any testifiers who wish to testify against the bill? Thank you. Senator Goggin, you can stay right there. Whoever would like to testify against the bill, please come up to the table together.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, please, excuse me. Welcome to the committee. Please introduce yourself for the tape. You'll just have, we don't have a lot of time on the agenda right here, but if you could just testify in about 60 to 90 seconds, that'd be great. Thank you, sir.
Bob Tamman from Sedan, Minnesota, home of Minnesota's first iron mine, and I served on the ground in Vietnam in 1965. I'm a veteran. And I would like to comment that while we have a policy of supporting our veterans in Minnesota and America, and I appreciate that policy, I would point out that the rates of suicide are higher amongst veterans than they are amongst the general population. When we steer our young people into a military career, we aren't necessarily steering them to a happy future. I would tell the board that one of our first confirmed kills in Vietnam was a 12-year-old Buddhist monk. One stray round of artillery and a kid is wiped away. We know America's well-documented record, wedding parties, hospitals. We've attacked them all. And so I would hope that when we have these bills to encourage military recruitment, we would include the groups that support peaceful reactions to differences of opinion between nations. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Next, if you could kindly introduce yourself for the tape, please. Welcome to the committee.
Steve McEwen. I'm one of the founders of Veterans for Peace in Minnesota. And I'm speaking against the bill, that portion of it that provides for a mandate for schools to provide instruction, for recruitment, for military recruiters to provide space. I think that this goes against local control. For one thing, I think that the military has ample opportunity with its $4 billion that they have for recruiting that doesn't include office space nor salary for recruiters. We're inundated by the military every which way we turn around. This is not appropriate for high school kids to have to receive this. When I see the trades in there, what kind of trade are we talking about? The military's purpose is to prepare for war. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. If you ask a general, they'll tell you the same thing. It shouldn't be dressed up as higher education either. So with that in mind, in the short presentation of time here, I'll turn it over to another member of Veterans for Peace.
Yeah, my name is Barry Reich, St. Paul, lifelong St. Paul resident. I did spend 2 years in the Army, and I spent a year in Vietnam. And first of all, I'm totally in favor of all types of career opportunities for our young people. We know we have a shortage of skilled people in our state of Minnesota. And the military, to me, does not provide anything for the local economy as far as skills and skilled labor and what have you. Take people out of Minnesota more than anything. I think that, like Steve said, our Pentagon has already got billions of dollars they're spending. I can't go to a movie theater anymore without seeing recruitment advertisements. You know, we put so much emphasis on the military. It wasn't a great career for me, and our recruiters, as a rule, do not tell you the full story about potential impact that military can have on your life. It totally impacted my life. It affected the rest of my life, my couple of years that I spent in the military. And so at least if we're going to have recruiters, they need to be balanced with people that can tell the real story.
Thank you for your comments. And I would, first of all, I want to thank each of you veterans for serving. I believe that we achieve freedom and peace through your sacrifice and service, and I want to thank you for that. I do want members to note, as they look at Senate File number 15, I'll just give you a little background, and then we'll turn it over to Senator Goggin for some closing comments. The part of the statute 120B.125, planning for student successful transition to post-secondary education and employment, personal learning plans. I can personally speak to this. This was a part of the all hands on deck recommendations regarding how we are going to best meet our workforce requirements. This happened to be a bill that I carried, these personal learning plans, when I was a freshman in this body in 2011 or 12. I believe it was 2011. And that those learning plans are for successful transitions to post-secondary and employment. And I want you to note that Senator Goggin's bill simply includes armed forces career options in helping students assess education and career options. So it's just inclusive, which one would think perhaps it would have been all along. And I know everyone on this panel, on this committee, is very, very cognizant of not placing unfunded mandates on our school districts. And I want to assure the committee, if you look at the bill on page 3, lines 11 through 14, you will notice that it's just providing the very same access as other careers in the personal planning pathway. So I appreciate the comments of our veterans who came here today, but I want to be very clear on the record that this is simply providing the same access to secondary school students as the district provides to institutions of higher education or other prospective employers of students. So with that little bit of history, any further questions, members? Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and actually not a question, but a comment. And thanks to Senator Goggin for bringing this bill forward, and thanks for you military folks for serving. I was also a military member from 1986 to 1990, and I hate to say this, but I disagree. I think the military, for me, was the best thing I ever did. It taught me leadership. It taught me to have morale with other people. It taught me what was definitely out there in the world. There's no doubt about that. But to me, the military is one of the best things that I ever did, and would promote it from this day on forward. I think it's a great thing. But again, I understand your other aspects to it. But I think it allows the access and the same access. So thank you very much.
Any further comments, members? Senator Uyghur.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I support the proposal. I know we need more counselors in the school now to help advise students on the next opportunities following graduation, but I see it helpful to provide potential pathways for success. These are not required that you would enlist. It's not required that you enter the trades, but if it's a good fit, go for it. And I just North St. Paul in my district, the ROTC program, I am so impressed with these young cadets that are in that, and I've looked at their curriculum and how it ties in with leadership, with civics. It's something we should aspire, in terms of, that path. And by the way, in the ROTC program, you aren't required then to enter the military. It's an option. Parents are involved as well, and it just says, if you're interested, it is not required. And just, on a personal note, one of my daughters, when she was just graduating high school back almost 15 years ago, wasn't quite sure about college, was going to enter, but decided to go in the National Guard. Had talked to a recruiter, yes, and we talked to her, and yes, we were concerned about Iraq, but she was motivated, talking. She had the facts. There'll be involvement, and eventually she served a tour of duty, came back, got a master's degree through that program, through the Montgomery and other benefits, and serves veterans today through the VA. I support providing these types of pathways, these options for students. It's voluntary.
Senator Clausen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question for Senator Goggin. Are you aware of any school districts that restrict military recruiters from entering their buildings?
Senator Goggin.
Madam Chair, Senator Clausen, at this time, no, I don't. There are school districts that have expressed that they may not allow recruiters on site, and I just think that that's not appropriate to take that opportunity from those students that are trying to find their way in life. And as Senator Jasinski said, it helped him out tremendously to help him figure out what he wanted to do. And as Senator Uyghur said, it's just an opportunity for the students and the teachers and the parents to talk about all possibilities that are out there for them. And a lot of people have found that the military was a great first step for them. It helped them with getting a perspective on where they want to go in life, and then also to help them after they leave the military to have some funding for their education. And so all I want to do with this bill is just have that option out there for students to be able to consider it, and that's all it is. So.
Senator Clausen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a comment. As a former high school principal, this issue got settled in the 1980s, actually, that military recruiters cannot be denied access into public schools. The bill doesn't do any harm, but I just wanted to make that point. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Clausen. And just to answer your question, actually, there was a school district in my Senate district that was not allowing military recruiters in their schools. So it has happened in a public school. Yes, sir. Okay, seeing no, Senator Torres-Ray.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, Senator, I think Senator Clausen asks a very good question that I think it will be very enlightened if you actually request some statistics about this issue for this bill. I know anecdotally that what you said, that the answer to that question is yes, there are some districts that actually do not engage in this conversation. And when you see the number of schools that are in the districts, that will tell you the difference. If you compare St. Paul and Minneapolis, for instance, you will see a significant difference. I have not been able to do the research. I have been invited to visit some of the schools where the large percentage of students are Latinos. And the recruitment and the desire in immigrant communities particularly in the Latino community, is very high to send kids to these schools. And right now in Minneapolis, for instance, there is a strong desire for having more access. And I am curious about, how it works. I have been just invited to study this, to understand how it works, to understand the difference between the districts and how they engage in the conversations with the schools, with the military, with the different communities that are looking for this opportunity. I just have not been able to go in depth into the issue, but I think it's an issue that we need to review. I would like to ask to have those statistics and to actually invite the districts. I don't know if a hearing will be, adequate, but I think we need to invite the districts to kind of ask about school board members. What is the policy? How do they do it? How do they explain kind of the difference of approach and the number of schools that are now in there, the recruitment process, and the number of students that they have in the schools. The schools that have invited me have been just very, kind of seeing the kids in these schools have been very, just kind of a very rewarding experience for me. Many of them graduate and go on to pursue higher education opportunities. So I think it's an issue that we need to study very carefully.
Thank you, Senator Torres-Ray. And members, just as a note, you are most welcome to survey your school districts to get and really further refine the questions that or choose from those that Senator Torres-Ray has put forth to get a broader view for this. For today, we've kind of overused our time for this topic, but it's incredibly important. I want to thank Senator Goggin for bringing this bill forward. Any further comments, Senator?
No, I just want to thank our veterans here for coming up and speaking, and thank you all for taking the time to listen to me.
Thank you, and I thank our testifiers, our veterans as well. With that, I'll renew my motion that Senate File 15 be recommended to pass and re-referred to the Veterans and Military Affairs Finance and Policy Committee. And all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. The bill's re-referred. Thank you. Senator Dames, if you could take the gavel, please.
Members, our next bill will be Senate File 295 PTEC. Senate 295 is Senator Nelson's bill. Senator Nelson, welcome. And will you please move Senate File 295 to be laid over for possible? I'm getting ahead of myself. Senator Nelson, would you present Senate File 295?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to move Senate File 295 be laid over for possible inclusion in the omnibus bill. And if we could have our testifiers come forward. We have Tori Johnson and Heidi Kramer. And I noticed one of the things I forgot to mention from the chair was as our testifiers come, if you could kindly sign in. Have a seat, please. Thank you.
Senator Nelson, would you like to make some brief comments on your bill, or would you like to have your testifiers?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just make a few comments. I know that this committee heard about PTEC last week. I just want to make sure that the audience as well knows what it stands for, Pathways in Technology Early College. We know that for years we have found that there is these individual silos between high school and college, and many of us have talked for a long time about how can we reduce those silos and get to a more seamless grade 12 and then the next year or two beyond that in a more seamless manner. I believe PTEC does that. It's a public-private partnership that will prepare students for high-skilled jobs in growing industries, particularly in the tech industry. I'm going to turn it over to my testifiers, and then I'll just walk briefly through the bill with you, Mr. Chair.
Well, thank you, Senator Nelson. And if the testifiers would announce their name before they testify, we'll start with Mr. Johnson.
All right, thank you. Torrey Johnson from IBM. I'm the Vice President of Supply Chain Engineering and the Senior State Executive here in Minnesota.
If you would go ahead with your testimony.
Yeah,
I
so
think I'm going to make testimony.
Oh, pardon me, I've got the testifiers out of order. We will have our senior management, Heidi Kramer, corporate
Ms. Kramer?
citizenship.
Right. Thank you, Senator. My name is Heidi Kramer, Senior Manager for IBM Citizenship in Minnesota, as well as the Global Manager for Employee Engagement Programming for IBM. On behalf of IBM, I would like to thank you for allowing us this opportunity to provide support for Senate Bill SF 295, establishing P-TECH schools. I'm a very proud Minnesotan. I grew up in Minnesota. I attended public high school. I received my bachelor's and master's degrees from local colleges, and I watched my children follow a similar path. But while I'm proud of what Minnesota has offered me, I'm keenly aware there are many in Minnesota that have not had these same opportunities. Minnesota must do better for all its students. Minnesota has always been about innovation. There are many education initiatives underway today where we see innovations that are helping students succeed, yet we continue to see a large gap in segments of Minnesota students. P-TECH is also built on innovation. P-TECH began in 2011. It is expanding rapidly across the U.S. and globally. It is significantly demonstrating promise in strengthening community college graduation rates, reinvigorating local economies, and changing life trajectories of young people our system continues to leave behind. It creates strong public-private partnerships, breaks down old structures and outdated rules, and rethinks the possibilities. When we were here on the 25th of January, our Education Vice President Grace Sue was here, and a couple of the things that the committee asked us to do was to come back with some testimonies from teachers and testimonies from students. So what you have in front of you are 4 independent teachers from our P-TECH schools who have written testimonies on being a teacher within the P-TECH system. And if you would allow, I'd like to have you watch a 4-minute video on what the students are saying about P-TECH.
Proceed.
Thank you.
We have sound.
We need to hear the audio.
My name is Shadon Brown. I'm 16 years old. I live in Berkeley, Brooklyn.
Check this out. What does it matter?
My name is Shadon Brown. I'm 16 years old. I live in Brooklyn, New York, and I'm a senior at P-TECH.
My name is Rashid Farad Davis. I am the founding principal of Pathways Technology Early College High School, P-TECH.
You can't hear that?
This is hooked into the laptop 2 port for our tech people in the back.
Can you hear this?
If you'd like, I could continue, and if we want to wrap
Sure.
up with that.
We're going to wrap up with this. We're going to let our testifier continue. We're going to ask our tech folks to figure out how to get the audio in for laptop 2.
Proceed, Ms. Kramer.
Thank you very much. I understand you do have the presentations in your packets as well, because I'm not sure they'll be putting that up right now. So, IBM is one of the very few companies that's been in existence for more than 100 years. We started as a manufacturer of clocks and industrial scales, and over the years, IBM has reinvented itself as the economy has changed, moving from tabulating machines to typewriters and then to computers, software, and consulting services. IBM has a long-standing commitment to education. Throughout our history, we've been committed to preparing all people to participate as productive workers in the 21st century. The fastest growing and highest paying sectors of the job market are requiring proficiency in STEM fields, but less than 1/3 of our U.S. students are adequately prepared for STEM careers, and college completion rates in this field remains mired in the single digits. As technology like AI continue to evolve, they will change many things on how we live and work, including the nature of our work and the way we do our jobs. We must enable our children with the education and training they need to participate in the economy on their own terms. It is essential that these efforts be underway starting now. Increasingly, the jobs of the 21st century are neither blue collar nor white collar, but instead a new term is coming, new collar. New collar jobs require post-secondary training or credentialing, but not necessarily the traditional 4-year college degree. Some of the technology industry's fastest growing fields are in new collar fields, including careers like cybersecurity, cloud computing, digital design, and AI development. Within the next 6 years, the U.S. economy will create 16 million new collar jobs. During that period, jobs requiring only a high school diploma will continue to disappear. In fact, from 2008 to 2016, nearly 7 million of these lower skilled jobs vanished forever. The skills crisis is a global phenomenon, plaguing countries across the world. To gauge current student challenges and assess future needs, the IBM Institute for Business Value and Oxford Economies surveyed more than 5,600 global C-suite executives, including 800 leaders from government and 1,500 leaders from higher education. According to this report, employers are increasingly crippled by the workforce whose skills have not kept pace with changing requirements. If left unsolved, the global skills shortage will have a profound effect on individuals and economies worldwide. P-TECH is one solution to strengthen education and workforce development. It addresses the global skills gap to strengthen regional economies. It provides underserved youth with an education opportunity that enables them to earn a 2-year degree along with the skills required to continue their education or to garner new-collar jobs with a solid career path for growth. The model supports public education and extends the high school from a traditional 4 years to 6 years. When students graduate, they earn both their high school diploma and an industry-recognized 2-year post-secondary degree within a 6-year time period. Upon graduation, the student can continue their education or be hired directly into industry. The strong equal partnership between K-12, higher education, and industry makes this model very powerful. The partners collectively provide students with academic, technical, and professional skills required to compete in the 21st century economy. It aligns each partner's expertise to ensure that students, many of whom are first in their family to go to college, graduate with a degree that matters. P-TECH features integrated high school and college coursework and a range of workplace experiences. P-TECH schools are open enrollment, and the degree is provided for free. Upon graduation, students are first in line for jobs with their employer partners. As one of the critical early steps, Employer Partners leads a skills mapping process that identifies what is required for those new jobs. Once identified, the skills are mapped by the expertise of the education partners to create a seamless 6-year curriculum roadmap for students. To ensure that students graduate career-ready, industry partners also provide a comprehensive set of focused workplace experiences that include workplace visits, mentoring, job shadowing, and paid internships. P-TECH has taken root in 110 schools across the United States, in New York, Illinois, Connecticut, Maryland, Colorado, Rhode Island, Texas, and Louisiana, and in 3 countries, Australia, Morocco, and Taiwan. Further replication is underway in places like California, New Jersey, as well as Singapore, Korea, Ireland, Colombia, and Brazil. Currently, IBM leads 11 of these schools. There are 70 community college partners and 550 businesses such as SAP, Global Foundries, and Johns Hopkins, as well as a variety of medium and small company partners that work in consortiums in the schools. A significant reason for the rapid expansion of P-TECH is because of the positive early results of the model. To date, P-TECH schools have more than 185 graduates, some who have completed their 6-year programs in as early as 3.5 years. The graduation rate for the first cohort of P-TECH students who earned their associate's degree in computer information systems or electromechanical engineering technology is 4 times higher than the on-time community college graduation rate and 5 times the rate for low-income children. What is particularly significant is that no P-TECH student has taken a single remediation course entering their community colleges. We know that those remediation courses, roughly about 50% of students entering community colleges do take at least one non-credit-bearing remedial course, which requires more public and personal investment and possibly reduces the potential to complete their degree. The results that we've seen so far are not perfect, right? We are not at 100% of students that are graduating, even after 6 years, with that post-secondary degree. But the model is learning with each new cohort and each new student. It is adapting. No P-TECH schools are exactly alike, as the key variations come from partners and students themselves. But this is what we do know. Time matters. What we can see is we can double the rate of success in years 5 and then again in year 6 by working with a broad-scale, diverse community that's served by this model. There are many faces of P-TECH, and I wish we were showing that presentation because you'd be able to see some of the students that graduated in our first wave. 30 of these students now work at IBM, and the majority of them are working and attending college at the same time. The good news is that we've also seen legislation that supports P-TECH pass in 4 states. We've also seen great progress on the federal level. This past July, the Perkins Act was reauthorized. Perkins, which provides $1.2 billion in CTE funding, has the potential to support career pathways like P-TECH. To support the growing network of P-TECH schools, IBM has created a playbook which is free and online and acts as a hub for these public-private partnerships. IBM is committed to P-TECH. We have stated that we would indeed be proud to host a school in Minnesota, as well as bring other resources to help P-TECH be successful in the state. This morning I presented at the Minnesota State Reimagining State event. The model garnered great attention and sparked keen discussions. The opportunity for our state's young people to fill jobs in competitive STEM fields, whether it be IT, advanced manufacturing, healthcare, business, finance, telecommunications, or hospitality, will change the life trajectories of some of our Minnesota's most disadvantaged youth. I would like to conclude with a quote I'll preview for you if we can get this up and running from the video, but it's absolutely my favorite. The principal for our P-TECH school in Brooklyn, Rashid Davis, reflects in the video, "Every day when I go home, I leave school and go home, I see the sense of urgency of why P-TECH matters, why we must move faster to redefine what success looks like in students and in communities. A good idea and support really has great potential to change generations." As a U.S. and Minnesota employer, IBM urges the committee to give SF 295 its full support. This legislation will help many students from all cultural and social economic backgrounds earn both their high school and 2-year degree and be better prepared for success entering the workforce of the 21st century. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kramer. And is the video ready to go now?
We believe it is.
You want to try it?
Give it a try. Thank you. Thank you, Senator.
Oh, members, I am so sorry. We will send around a link to make sure that you all have the opportunity to see this short 4-minute video. You will be glad to invest that time. I apologize that we're not getting that audio today. But if I could have Mr. Johnson give a few comments. He's the Vice President of Supply Chain Engineering and IBM's Senior State Executive.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson, for being here, and go ahead with your testimony.
All right, thank you, Senator. As most of you know, IBM's had a major presence in Minnesota for over 60 years with our facility in Rochester, and we're very proud of our history. We celebrate that a lot, of history of innovation over those many decades. But we're most proud of what we are accomplishing lately, and just to cover a few of the things just in the last year. We are a leader in the state of Minnesota in patents filed and published. IBM is a worldwide leader in the number of U.S. patents for the 26th year in a row, and the teams here in Minnesota have played a major part in that. Just in the last year, teams in Rochester have developed, supported, and delivered the #1 and #2 supercomputers in the world that are at our Department of Energy named Summit and Sierra. And we have taken over from China now with the supercomputer lead, thanks to our teams here in Minnesota. We work on quantum computing and the latest innovations around that, hybrid cloud, Watson Health, in a partnership with Mayo Clinic. So innovation is in our core. We see P-TECH and other workforce development initiatives as key to our future, worldwide, but also here in Minnesota. It's these important STEM skills not only often come through college degrees, but in the future we need more students with the availability to get into technical fields, and P-TECH is a path to do that, and that's why we're so passionate about it. And IBM is committed, as Heidi Kramer said, that to provide that industry drive and passion and support that often is lacking in some of these education initiatives.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Senator Nelson, do you have any further comments or closing comments?
Just a couple, Mr. Chair. So you've heard a lot today about the P-TECH program, allowing students to graduate with an industry-recognized credential degree along with their high school diploma that will enable them to secure a competitive industry-recognized entry-level position in a growing STEM industry. And you will note that these pathways are high wage, high skill, and high demand career areas. And P-TECH provides support to students to encourage strong academic performance and ensures that our business partners have access to this skilled workforce. I'll just list 5 brief things you want to know about P-TECH. It's a partnership, as you know, between the school district, the education partner, and the industry. So there's that magic sauce of those 3 entities that come together in this collaborative environment. It can be up to a 6-year program integrating the high school and the college coursework, again leading to that industry-recognized post-secondary degree. And I say up to a 6-year because you might note that it's also a competency-based program. And we've often talked about that, about the travails of just seat time when we really should be measuring competencies. This is a competency-based learning model as well, which is why you heard some students could graduate in 3.5 years with both industry credential and their high school diploma, as well as the maximum would be 6 years. It allows, there must be a workplace learning strand, including mentoring, worksite visits, paid internships, apprenticeships. Of course, open enrollment is part and parcel to how we do education in Minnesota. And then most importantly, there's a job at the end, a good job, a high-skilled, high-wage, in-demand job. It allows students to be the first in line for those jobs with the industry partners. So I would encourage your support. It tackles a lot of the issues that we've been talking about for years. The silos, the competency-based learning, and now what we're seeing in our state, which is an actual workforce crisis. So this is a very innovative way of partnering with our industry partners to make sure all of our kids who can participate in P-TECH graduate ready for those high-demand jobs.
Well, thank you, Senator Nelson. Members, are there any questions for Senator Nelson or the testifiers on Senate File 295? Senator Torres-Ray.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Nelson, thank you. I think this is an innovative proposal, and I think so, as you stated, important and needed. As I hear the presentation, I think that there are a couple of core values on the language that you're proposing. One is the strong academic performance and labor force issues, and the desire to really serve disadvantaged, underserved populations. I wonder if you would be open to incorporate some language into this. I think it presents us an opportunity to dive into this more concretely. So in line 2.4, you have support strong academic performance. I would like to suggest that we incorporate into that and ethnic diversity by program participants, because I think that's, if I hear you, that's kind of one that you really want to pursue. And so it will read support strong academic performance and ethnic diversity by program participants.
Senator Nelson.
Mr. Chair, Senator Torres-Ray, you have perceived correctly that this is the history of P-TECH and the intent of P-TECH. However, with that in mind, and I believe that is the case, I would not want to add these words at this very moment. I want to, we don't want to not have a P-TECH site because we weren't able to find those 3 magic sauce partners in an area of ethnic diversity. So I don't want it to be limiting at this point. But I can personally pledge to you that the desire is, and I anticipate that we will be able to make sure that there's ethnic diversity in our P-TECH students. And if you're able to look at the video, you will see that that is the history as well. But to help address what the intent is and what the history is, perhaps I could have Ms. Kramer talk a little bit about the over 100 P-TECH schools and what the diversity looks like in those schools, because that is the intent and the goal.
Ms. Kramer.
Thank you. Yes, so what I would say is that as you look across the diversity, obviously the disadvantaged are absolutely the sweet spot for P-TECH. How states are doing that, though, is really on a state-by-state basis. In New York and in California, they did an RFP. So they did, they appropriated a certain amount of schools, and then they went out for RFPs, and they had many more schools that wanted the P-TECH school than there were eligible slots, but then they chose where they felt they best represented what the state's needs were. So they worked in hand in glove with the State Department of Education, as well as the business partners and those that are doing the RFPs, but that's how they really tackled that. They made sure that things were rural. They made sure things were urban, right? So they really made sure that for their state, this fit what they needed to get accomplished.
Senator Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And as you know, this is one of Minnesota's goals as well. And so while I might not, I would not support it at this point. There may be a spot later down the road, either in the legislation itself, or if we go with the RFP model in the RFP. So I will note this, this interest of not just yours, but really, I think, all of us here.
Senator Torres-Ray, follow up.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator Nelson. I think part of the desire, I think for me at least, to review the language in almost every single piece of policy that we do is that we are not meeting kind of that spirit of the law and the benchmarks that we put for ourselves in terms of recruiting diverse students, graduating diverse students, giving diverse students these opportunities. So for me, having the language is really a very strong statement that needs to be in there. So I would like to see it. I would like to offer it and I will continue to pursue that. In what form, I'll obviously rely on your expertise on how it should be incorporated. But I do think that it is time that we actually put in our statements, not just that we desire, that we think is a good idea, that it is something that is our principle, because it has been, and we have the worst disparities in the country. So I trust that we have had that for the last 25, 30 years, but we have not achieved the outcome. So I think it's time for us to really begin to look into, how do we state that in policy? How do we state measures? How do we incorporate measures that are actually more tangible to see the numbers moving in a different direction? So I do encourage you to think about it.
Thank you. Mr. Chair.
Senator Nelson.
Yes, absolutely. And I know you and I, Senator Torres-Ray, have worked on similar language when it came to economic development bills as well, making sure that we have diversity in all aspects there. So we will continue to work on this. I've noted it here. We will do so.
Other members have any questions? Senator Uyghur.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Madam Chair, for your sponsorship. And I've spoken before about the great concepts here, and diving a little bit more into how it would work. Are you looking at more than one school initially in the rollout, or how much money in terms of the respective partners in this match? So I'm wondering about how that would happen. I would see, obviously, in the Rochester area would be a great fit, but we're looking at a few, and then maybe two if we have an evaluation tool in the legislation.
Senator Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Uyghur, certainly I can tell you what my hope is. I'd like to see them rolled out across this state, but we do know that we have to grow. as well. My hope would be to see one in every region of the state, but again, we can't mandate that industry partners step up to the plate and do this. So we need to, as I said, it's kind of like that special agreement with an industry provider. We can't mandate that a school district choose to do this. And we can't mandate that a community college choose to do this. But we can set the parameters so that school districts, industry, and our community colleges do want to work together in this collaborative effort. And that's where we're going with this. Regarding the amount of money, you know, certainly I'll be waiting to see what the February forecast is. We need to see that. And then also what our budget targets are. But I can promise you that I believe that this is something that is good for our students. It's good for decreasing the achievement gap, which has been very persistent in this state, much as we've tried to reduce it. This is one way that we actually can. And I think it will be really advantageous for our employers as well, who are facing a workforce crisis. So I can tell you we'll continue to work hard on this.
Senator Uyghur, follow-up.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Nelson, I agree with the points you made, and we've heard eloquent testimony from the business partners. And what's the feedback been from the other partners?
Senator Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's new, but I'll tell you, we have heard from school districts who are very interested. In fact, many of our school districts have already started these type of collaborative investments together, but they've not really reached out into the industry sector as much or the community college. So far there's been great interest in all of the entities that have spoken to me. We anticipate we will hear more as this goes forward.
Members, other questions? Seeing no other questions, Senate File 295 will be laid over for possible inclusion in an omnibus bill. Thank you, members. The next file will be Senate File 94, Senator Eichhorn.
Mr. Chair, question?
Yes.
The bill that we just heard, will that be passed on to higher education?
Senator Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I may have misspoken on exactly where the bill needs to go next. And so we need to ask Mr. Marcus what the procedure is for the next stop for this bill.
If you would like to have it referred there, we can do that subsequently.
Yes.
At this point, we'll keep it as it is.
Thank you. And also any chair that asks to have a bill referred, we can do that on the floor. You know that process. Yes.
Thank you. Senator Eichhorn. Senate File 94.
Welcome, Senator Eichhorn, to your committee. Would you like to move your bill, please? We have Senate File 94 in front of us.
Yes, Madam Chair, I'd like to move Senate File 94, please.
Senate File 94 has been moved. Senator Eichhorn, please present some opening comments.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair and committee. We are going to take just a moment here. I'm going to start presenting, but we do have a video of one of our testifiers that's actually from Senator Johnson's district. A little bit far of a drive for him, so hopefully we can get that working. If not, Senator Johnson and I will both provide some comments.
Senator Eichhorn, I hope you are more successful than our technology crew was in getting this done.
Well.
Senator Johnson, welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, last week we had a testifier that was willing to come down 30 below or not, which is, he was pretty passionate about this particular bill. But we do, it doesn't sound like it's going to work, is it? No. Okay. So I will, I'll give a little background on.
Can we give an overview on the bill? bill first?
Yeah, why don't you give an overview on the bill if you want?
Yeah, I'll give a little overview on Senate File 94. We got a little ahead of ourselves there.
Senator Eichhorn.
This was a bill that we had done last year. It was included in the omnibus bill, and unfortunately, the omnibus bill was vetoed. This wasn't one of those reasons. What this would do is allow 10th grade students who are non-public school students to also take a class of PSEO in a career and tech field. That would put those non-public school students on par with their public school peers. And we felt that, you know, out of fairness, that would be a good thing to do for them. I've had people from my district, and Senator Johnson has had constituents from his district as well that were asking for this opportunity. So we're just trying to put all kids on the same playing field. Again, we think that's, you know, the fair thing to do. We did have a fiscal note last year. It was very small. We haven't got one for this year, but last year's fiscal note on this was only $10,000, so it's going to be a small amount. But we think it's a great opportunity for students that want to do this, and obviously PSEO is an important piece of what we're talking about and bending the cost curve on, you know, students wanting to go to college and things like that, and to help lower some of that. And we think, again, it's a good opportunity. Unfortunately, you won't be able to hear from Senator Johnson's constituent, but we think this is a good opportunity, and I'll give him a chance to make a few comments about it.
Thank you, Senator Eichhorn. And members, we will send that link out as well. So you'll be having two little pieces of homework, two links to review, and we'll see what's going on with our technology as well. Senator Anderson, did you have some comments?
Yes. Thank you, Senator Nelson and committee. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today on behalf of my constituent, Patrick Hart. He was the very first meeting after the November election in 2016 who called my office and said, we've got to talk. We've got an issue up here, and I believe it's across the state. So we need to talk. So he came over and he described the situation in which whether it is a homeschool group or a private institution whose 10th graders are being sent over to, they want to take a technical education course. So they want to be able to go to the technical institute and be able to take some courses there, that the school district or the private institution is not being refunded those dollars. And I think that that was not necessarily the intent of the original language, but I feel that this bill corrects that situation and allows those individuals the opportunity to go to those institutions and take that technical training, because we want to encourage that sort of thing. So it's a very simple bill, straightforward, but I think the policy behind it is sound.
Thank you, Senator Anderson. Mr. Arneson, could you speak a bit about how how this works? About PSEO in 10th grade.
Madam Chair, so in general, if a student is enrolled in post-secondary enrollment options course, other than a course operated under an agreement, and I mean, under an agreement is the way it's written in the law, but colloquially we normally call that concurrent enrollment agreements. So if a student is enrolled other than under an agreement, the student's ADM, or adjusted daily membership, average daily membership in the school district, is reduced more or less in proportion to the number of hours that they're spending in the post-secondary course. If the course is operated under an agreement, which many of these courses are, then the district retains all the average daily membership locally and negotiates some agreement with the partner post-secondary institution to provide courses that meet the requirements of the dual crediting programs.
Thank you, Mr. Arneson. And Ms. Hofer, do you have the fiscal note? Could you just review that for the committee, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the fiscal note that was included in today's materials is from the 2018 session. It has not been updated because we're waiting on the February forecast. The cost of this fiscal note is largely driven by the number of non-public 10th graders that are anticipated to enroll in the CTE PSEO courses, and those numbers will be revised with the February forecast. I would not expect the fiscal note to change much, if at all, from the current version. On page 3 of the fiscal note, you do have an expenditure and revenue table that does look at the number of public 10th grade CTE PSEO students currently enrolled, and it uses the number of public students and applies that formula to the number of non-public students to get an estimate of the number who would participate in this program. On line 10, you can see that it's estimated that there will be approximately 11 non-public 10th grade pupils enrolled in a CTE PSEO course for any given year going forward, and the cost per semester credit is included in there as well. So that would bring you down to line 14, which gives you a total cost of approximately $10,000 per year. And once the February forecast is released, we can get an updated fiscal note on this bill.
Thank you, Ms. Hofer. Any further comments? I've just been informed members were about 15 minutes behind schedule. So any further comments or questions? Closing comments from either of the senators?
First, I'll go second. I can finish up. You got any closing? Go ahead.
Senator Eichhorn.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you guys for the opportunity to hear this bill today. We think it's a good thing to do on just a basic level of fairness so that all students in our state are on the same playing field, and we appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Senator Eichhorn. Would you move your bill be laid over for possible inclusion in an omnibus bill?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Eichhorn. Our next bill will be Senate File 19 by Senator Swedzinski. Senator Swedzinski, please move Senate File 19 be laid over for possible inclusion in the omnibus bill. And before you explain your bill, Senator Swedzinski, do you have an amendment? And any amendment, Senator Swedzinski?
No.
Okay, thank you. We're on a roll here to make sure we get to hear from everyone.
Okay, thank you,
Senator
Madam
Swad.
Chair and fellow members. My name is Steve Swedzinski. The bill before you today is Senate File 19, which will require that all Minnesota high school students take a course in personal finance education before graduating. Personal finance education needs to be a state priority. All young people need this knowledge to know their role in today's economy. Financial independence, self-sufficiency, all the things we think we're teaching our children is getting missed in the grand scheme of things. Too many kids are growing up and graduating from high school without understanding how their own personal finances work. We think it's important to teach our kids how a bill becomes a law, but we're forgetting to teach them how a bill ends up in the mail coming to your house. Did you catch that? It was a thank you, Senator Kent. So knowing things about student debt and car shopping and home ownership and paying the bills is essential to living in today's society. My first door knocking experience 2.5 years ago, I knocked at this person's house. I told him I was a teacher. She said right away, how come we're not requiring a personal finance or financial literacy class in our schools? And I go, well, what do you mean? And she goes, when I was a kid growing up, we sat and watched our parents fight. I mean, we watched our parents talk around the kitchen table, and they paid the bills and they talked about finances. And today the kids are not learning that skill because us as grown-ups are paying all of our bills online. So our kids are missing the education they used to get at home. And now it's upon us, the Education Committee, I believe, to teach that, require this class in school. The kids today are growing with a mountain of college debt that is unheard of in American history. And any day now, they're going to start becoming 25, 26 years old, and they're going to go want to get a loan at the local bank to buy the homes of us, aging baby boomers in the suburbs. And those mortgage industries are going to say, you're not qualified for a debt, for a loan because you have too much college debt. And then that's going to be a real wake-up call for the baby boomers when our own homes start plummeting in value. So I know the concern is local flexibility and no more mandates, but I think this goes beyond that, and we owe it to our young people to teach them financial responsibility. We need mathematicians, we need writers, we need artists, we need scientists, we need all those professions, but we need them to understand their own financial literacy. I've heard from teachers and students and financial experts and most importantly, parents over the last few years. They all say the same thing, what we're going to hear from these people. We need this course in our high schools. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator. If I could ask who would like to speak first, I will call Sally Adams then. If you could confine your remarks to just a couple minutes, please. Thank you so much. Go ahead.
Okay.
Ms. Adams.
I am a personal financial educator, and I want to say that I'm passionate about personal finance because I feel that to have money is to have power over your own destiny. However, to have money is also to need to know how to manage that money if you want to keep it and use it correctly. I taught a curriculum that contained 6 different units: credit, budgeting, savings and banking, investing, insurance, and taxes. Many things that students knew nothing about. We did real-life simulations. We looked at Schumer boxes. What are the pros and cons, and what does a credit card really cost you? We looked at student loans. If I take that out now, how long am I going to be paying for? We calculated how much that would ultimately cost and talked about the fact that you need to get an education that gets you a job where you can afford that debt, or can you afford that debt? The feedback I got from students was incredible. They came in and said, oh my gosh, I went out this weekend and I actually bought a car, I got a loan, I understood it all, I've budgeted for it, this is so exciting. I had other students come back and say, I actually sat down with my parents and talked about what the insurance policy meant. They were explaining co-pays and co-insurance and out-of-pocket maximums and deductibles and what it meant. We calculated, if I break my arm, and what is that going to cost me out of my pocket? It's not just an insurance premium anymore. I think it's vital, and it came back to me from parents and students regularly how much they were using it. I believe all education is important, and I know that there's a series of requirements to graduate from high school, but I can't think of a requirement that is more relevant to everyone from the day they learn it until they die than personal financial management.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. Next, we have Yona Davis, a student. We always love to hear from our students. We're going to confine you, though, to just a couple minutes. Mr. Davis, welcome to the committee. Introduce yourself for the tape, please.
Madam Chair and members of the committee, good afternoon. My name is Yona Davis, and I'm a senior at St. Louis Park High School. In my junior year of high school, I took the personal financial literacy course offered at my school. Throughout the duration of the class, I learned about budgeting, credit, insurance, savings, bankings, and investments. Unlike some other classes, I left this class every day feeling as if I had learned something concrete and necessary for my future. 2 summers ago, I got my first real job. I worked 40 hours a week at a local design-build construction company. Unlike babysitting jobs, I was paid for this job through direct deposit, and money was deducted for Social Security and taxes from each paycheck. Using my knowledge from the personal finance class, I was able to maximize my summer earnings. I opened a Roth IRA account and began investing in mutual funds and stocks. Despite my relatively insignificant earnings, I learned that the earlier I begin to save, the more secure my financial future will be. Had I not taken this class, I would not have known how to most effectively utilize my money. Additionally, the skills I learned through this course gave me the tools to win a DECA scholarship at a state competition. Speaking to my peers who did not take this class, many indicated regret that they don't have the financial literacy tools which are taught in this course. As I head off to college next year, I will utilize the skills I learned from personal finance on a daily basis. From budgeting to taking out loans, the information from this class is invaluable. Additionally, as I, like many of my peers, anticipate a high cost of college, the tools provided from this course will be very important in working towards a stable and prosperous financial future. Optional personal finance education is a disservice to all high school students in Minnesota. As a student, I believe that personal finance education has been one of the most valuable and applicable courses I have taken, and believe it should be made mandatory for all students. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Mr. Klee, please introduce yourself for the tape. Confine your comments to just a minute or two, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee, for your time and consideration on this important topic of financial literacy. My name is Jason Klee. I'm a certified financial planner, practitioner, and volunteer speaker to students and the broader community on personal finance topics. One of the first questions that I ask people that I work with is, what is your first money memory? The reason for that is that many of the money habits that we have are formed during childhood. Children experience the money habits and learn about effective money management skills from 2 primary sources. One is at home, the other is at school. And unfortunately, children are not receiving a lot of that education at home, either because it's not taught or it's not taught correctly. And many of our schools don't integrate financial planning and personal finance within the high school curriculum. There is also a change happening in our society that was referenced earlier. I recall as a child seeing my parents sit down with a checkbook and a stack of bills and writing a check for each of those payments. Today, many people pay those bills electronically, and many are not even receiving the paper statements in the mail. Also, many people are moving from cash payments to electronic payments. So the visual cues for responsible money management are disappearing. And this places increased importance on other ways to develop effective money management skills. These skills are of great importance to our society. There is a reason that employers are placing more emphasis on financial wellness programs within their places of business. I see this firsthand. One of the main reasons is because ineffective money management is trickling into other areas of their lives, and in particular, workforce productivity. Also, there are varying reasons people may rely on government programs for assistance. Some are within one's control, others are outside of one's control. If we can help people who may be facing challenges within their control, we can reduce the dependence on government programs and encourage more financial independence. I have given a program on education in an affordable housing community for low-income residents. Many of the people I talked with had an earnest desire to understand budgeting and to get to a place of further financial independence. What if we can provide these tools earlier in their lives so they can experience that financial independence? Another example that comes to my mind is a few years ago, I gave a presentation on financial education to a group of college students. And one of the questions that I received from one of the students was, and I quote, "I heard from my friends that we should not pay off a credit card in full every month. Is this true?" End quote. If we can address these questions sooner, that is a successful outcome.
We need to move to closing comments.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Although I understand there's one more testifier, MSBA. Please, Grace Kelleher. Oh, and Gary Amoroso, please come up, both. I'm sorry, I didn't see that. Oh, yes, I just had to turn to page 2. All right. Ms. Kelleher, welcome to the committee. Introduce yourself for the tape, please.
Well, thank you, Madam Chairman and members. My name is Grace Kelleher, and I represent the Minnesota School Boards Association. We represent every locally elected school board member from around the state, and we wanted to sort of share our thoughts on this bill along with other requirements that are in other bills that we're tracking this year. We definitely have concerns about this piece because we would go from 7 electives for our kids to make down to 6.5. And to be honest, that junior and senior year is a time when they take their concurrent enrollment class and get college credit for it. It is the time they take their music classes, their marching bands, their choir trips, all those things they like, but they come out of those 7 credits. And I've watched over the years as we've started out with quite a few credits and gotten smaller and smaller and smaller. One piece of testimony from last year is Superintendent Joe Brown was in front of you asking for help because he wanted to offer a vocational welding class on Saturday. And needless to say, his piece didn't get any farther out of this building than anything else last year. But it really says some of these initial pieces that could be really good for a segment of the population maybe should be looked at as a time on Saturday where children can go get their needed help, as well as keeping them on track for what they seem to think is the really great part of their schedule. So I'd be happy to answer, Madam Chairman, any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Kelleher. Mr. Amoroso, welcome to the committee. Introduce yourself for the tape, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Gary Amoroso, Executive Director of the Minnesota Association of School Administrators, representing the superintendents and other district-level administrators in the state. I I agree with a lot of what I heard from the first three testifiers about the money management and all those things, and do not doubt that it's a significant topic. Some of the things that Ms. Keller said, we also agree with. The concern being going from 7 to 6.5 electives for our students means that by putting this in, we're prioritizing this over something else that an individual student would value. And so if the committee would want to move forward with something like this, would there be the conversation then, if this is of that nature, of that importance, would it be worth looking at the current required credits and saying, could we reduce one of those by 1/2 credit? If this is truly that significant, then reduce something else by 1/2 credit, keep the 7 credits for our students to have their electives. The other thing, Madam Chair, that I would question is that if this were approved as presented, from my perspective, there's a fiscal impact that I don't see here. If this were to happen, you would need to have a curriculum created, you would need to have materials and supplies, and that would cost dollars. And so I'd want to know more about what that might look like if it were to move forward. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Amoroso. Members, are there any questions or comments for our testifiers? Note we have one more bill to hear today, and we also have a report on some legislation from last year. Senator Uyghur.
Yes, Madam Chair, very briefly.
Brevity.
I think all the testifiers, that you respectively make great points. There are a number of programs, too, that are in place, and the credit union network, they were just here showing student-run credit unions where they are day by day practicing financial literacy. There's the Jumpstart Financial Smarts for Students program. There's National Endowment for Financial Education, which has rollouts available, and I'm sure you're aware of it, but collectively keep working on those, and to the extent in existing programs and standards that we have, to the extent you can tie that in with reality, I think you can do that, and I've seen teachers do that actually. So, and we'll leave it at that, except on my own experience, I remember when Hal Greenwood used to be in charge of Midwest Federal or whatever it was, but we had piggy banks in elementary school, and the bank probably was a loss leader, but they taught us just in elementary school by collecting your pennies and putting it in that bank with the shelter, the umbrella on it, and I think I'm still sharing it today, and it taught frugality.
Thank you, Senator Uyghur. A good skill we all learn. Senator Swedzinski, do you have any closing
Thank
comments?
you, Madam Chair. Maybe the fiscal note would be piggy banks for all the students in this required class. So thank you, colleagues.
Thank you. Senate File 19 will be laid over for possible inclusion with the omnibus bill.
Members, our next bill is Senate File 293. Senator Nelson, will you please move Senate File 293 be recommended to pass and re-referred to the Jobs and Economic Growth, Finance, and Policy Committee? Senator Nelson.
Thank you, Senator Dames. So moved.
Thank you, Senator Nelson. Do you have any authors' amendments?
Senator Dames, there are no authors' amendments. We have Senate File 293 before us.
Senator Nelson, will you please explain the purpose of Senate Bill 293?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senate File 293 is construction careers, and the first part of this bill seeks a collaboration between the Departments of Education and Labor and Industry to create information and paths for youth when choosing careers. The second part of the bill specifically asks Dolly to help identify appropriate methods to allow youth to obtain experiential learning on job sites, much like Senator Paul Anderson's Youth Skills Training Program. So the bill has a root in legislation passed in Colorado. We know that this day has been focused on meeting our workforce crisis and enabling our students to do so. And those two meaningful developments from the language will be helpful. With that, Mr. Chair, and with our short time frame, I'd like to turn it over to my testifiers.
Thank you, Senator Nelson, and we'll open it up to the testifiers. Ma'am, if you'd like to go first.
I was going to introduce our third one, so do you want to go first, Adam?
Sure, I'd be happy
Okay.
to. Yeah. Mr. Chair and members, my name is Adam Hansen. I'm with the Associated Builders and Contractors of Minnesota. We represent over 350 contractors throughout the state who employ over 22,000 multi-skilled craft professionals. We represent plumbers, electricians, equipment operators, and more. These fields and others in construction are rewarding and create high-paying, family-sustaining jobs. Our contractors are telling us that finding the next generation of skilled professionals is the #1 issue that's going to affect them in the years to come. Now, once these contractors find these individuals to fill the jobs, they have no issues training or retaining and keeping these employees employed and finding them steady work, especially in this booming economy. But our students today aren't hearing about these jobs. You're not hearing about the construction trades and all the different avenues to get into construction. And that's why we thank Senator Nelson and the bipartisan co-authors on this bill for promoting careers in construction so we can create the next generation of craft professionals who can build Minnesota. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hansen. And ma'am, if you'd like to go next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Remy Stone. I'm Executive Vice President of the Builders Association of Minnesota. I wanted to give you some Minnesota statistics and tell you a little bit about why we believe this bill is really important, and then I'll turn it over to a young person who's actually experienced this career journey. First of all, BAM's 1,800 members. We employ 50. Yes. Oh. The Builders Association of Minnesota is BAM, and our 1,800 members employ roughly 54,000 women and men in Minnesota's construction industry. Currently, and these are some Minnesota statistics talking about where we're at in terms of construction job availability and construction careers. 53% of all general contractors are looking for skilled labor. Over the next 5 years, construction jobs will grow 11.5% faster than any other major segment. Construction workers in Minnesota make an average of $9,835 more than recent college graduates. The average salary for a construction worker in Minnesota is $63,231 jobs. Today, there were 5,243 construction jobs listed on Indeed in Minnesota alone. And in March of this past year, Indeed reported that Minnesota's construction industry will be short 20,000 employees in the next decade. Needless to say, this is an industry that's facing a tsunami of need for construction for individuals who are interested in construction careers. We are really very interested in seeing how Senator Paul Anderson's Youth Skills Training Program works. We know today that it's limited to 4 sectors, and the construction industry is not part of that. What's missing in Minnesota is a meaningful effort to let young women and men be aware of opportunities in the construction industry that are possible in small businesses that may not fit within the current format created by the organized efforts within the state, such as Construct Tomorrow, a program that I'm sure you'll be hearing a little bit about later from other testifiers. Quite plainly, the small Main Street builder and subcontractors need to be fit into the labor creation pipeline that has been reserved for large construction companies and their trade union partners, and we need to work with education and DLI to develop the best, most safe methods to do this. And
if I could have you wrap it up, Ms. Stone.
Yes, and to that, I have a young student, a young gentleman from Dunwoody who would like to speak with you about his very real experience in seeking a career in the construction trades.
Sir, if you'd like to state your name and address, or state your name and your occupation, and go ahead and do your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Tyler Fish. I am a sophomore at Dunwoody College Technology. And I guess I'm today just kind of testifying to tell you all that it is very important that this would be included in our construction or in our high schools. When I was a senior in high school 2 years ago, I realized that I no longer wanted to go into the medical field. But when I got to that point, I didn't really know where to go from there. And it was by sitting down and having a conversation with my father, who was an HVAC technician, that he suggested that I checked out Dunwoody College of Technology to go there and pursue a career in construction. So I thought that was a great idea, and I went to look at it. When I was in high school, there was never any talk about Dunwoody or any trades industry in the high school. And the only way that I found out about this was through my father. I think that this is a very important topic that needs to be discussed in high school. There are many students who have these skills and passions that are designed for the trades industries, and I believe that success is not measured by what university you would attend after you graduate high school. I believe success is determined by pursuing your passions and using your skills to better the community around you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And ma'am, if you would like to state your name and go ahead with your testimony.
Hi, I'm Sunny Bowman with Dakota County Lumber in Farmington, Minnesota, an active member of Housing First Minnesota and constituent of Senator Clausen's. We live in Apple Valley, so hi. I'm here today just to talk a little bit about the workforce crisis that we've been dealing with as a lumber yard that deals with mainly professional contractors, a lot of small business owners. The Housing First Minnesota issued a study recently talking about the labor shortage. They found that 88% of Minnesota construction firms have reported a labor shortage in the last year, with 63% of them saying that that labor shortage caused them to turn away business. So this is having a real impact on housing availability and also housing affordability and larger economic ramifications. As a 20-person business at Dakota County Lumber, I'm actively hiring for 5 open positions right now, which is, a huge percentage. And all that I hear from my contractors is we have more business than we can handle. We would add another crew, but there isn't any skilled labor. Also, as a 31-year-old young woman, I can anecdotally say that my generation was pushed to college. The bachelor's degree was the be-all, end-all, and I have seen my peers putting off life decisions, not buying houses, not getting married, not having kids while they deal with their student loan debt. And one of the things is that we just never heard about other opportunities. So I really thank Senator Nelson for introducing this opportunity to teach kids that there are other options, especially as somebody who works with people that maybe had no education other than, a high school diploma and are now business owners themselves, having very successful careers in the construction trade. So just wanted to offer that perspective. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Baumann. We certainly appreciate you being here. Ms. Gannon, Assistant Commissioner.
Yes. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Heather McGannon. I'm Assistant Commissioner at the Minnesota Department of Labor and Industry. I'm here today to provide testimony for Senate File 293, which proposes raising awareness among middle school and high school students through career counseling, specifically around construction and the skilled trades. The Minnesota Department of Labor and Industry supports efforts to meet growing demands for skilled workers by increasing pathways into construction and the skilled trades. If passed, DLI will work with the Commissioner of Education to incorporate construction and skills trade pathways into career counseling for middle and high school students. Section 2 of the bill includes studying ways to ensure the safety of youth receiving training with the possibility of being on location at construction sites. Again, if this bill is passed, DLI would conduct a study. However, we must stress that construction is a high hazard industry, and DLI has serious concerns with allowing children under the age of 18 to work or receive training on location at construction sites. Minnesota law does not allow children to work on any hazardous occupation, which does include construction and building projects. There are 2 exceptional training programs that allow students to learn about and gain experiences and careers in the construction industry. You've heard Construct Tomorrow and the Minnesota Trades Academy. These programs offer safe environments for youth to explore opportunities in construction. The agency would also require an appropriation to conduct the study and complete the report listed in Section 2. The agency is in the process of finalizing a fiscal note for this activity. DLI is pleased the author recognizes that safety is the highest priority, and this And that should this bill become law, we will look forward to studying what safety precautions must be incorporated into educational and training opportunities for children in the skilled trades. Thank you.
Thank you, Assistant Commissioner. Mr. Melander?
Great, thank you. Senator Nelson, committee members, my name is Harry Melander. I'm the president of the Minnesota Building and Construction Trades Council. Our organization represents more than 70,000 unionized construction workers that live and work in Minnesota. Today, I'd like to comment on a few items that exist within the Senate File 293. Section 1, as a former apprentice, craft professional, and post-secondary vocational educator, we're very happy that Senator Nelson is bringing this forward. For years, our organization has advocated for vocation and industrial education to be part of the learning career options for middle and high school students. Section 2, although we are in support of the study, we do have some concerns regarding what is considered construction. As you well know, construction can be considered building a fence with your uncle or your aunt to working on a nuclear plant or on a 50-story high-rise. I believe it's not the intent of the Senator to provide on-site opportunities for all construction, but it's important that we define what construction is and where you can get a meaningful and safe experience. I encourage the Senator and Mindali to sit down with our training coordinators to discuss safe and meaningful opportunities and experiences for young men and women that are considering construction as a career and not just as a summer job. Again, thank you for Senator Nelson as we look forward to working with you and others as we discuss these opportunities in preparation for a new generation of construction trades professionals.
Thank you, Mr. Melander. Members, are there any questions? Senator Clausen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Senator Nelson, just a question. There's two sections. The first section that was just outlined, it talks about incorporating construction and skilled trades through career counseling. And then the second one talks about safety on the job. And where's the connection of a program to put kids into that kind of a situation? I don't see a connection there. How this is supposed to happen, who's going to be involved, that kind of thing. If you could clarify that, I'd appreciate it.
Sure.
Senator Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Clausen, as we know, a lot of times apprenticeships, internships, experience are key elements of construction careers or any jobs. I mean, we're talking about apprenticeships, mentorships, internships. That's kind of something that our committee has focused on. And I just wanted to get a report from Dolly on safety in the skilled trades for students who would be high school students. We don't know at this point what that would look like, but I think it's important to look at that. Other states have done different things in that regard. Certainly, we would never want children to be in a dangerous construction zone, and I believe OSHA does a nice job of actually describing what those dangerous construction zones are and what those activities are. And so we would want to, out of an abundance of caution, do a study to look at, are there some elements of a construction site like maybe painting or using a broom or, I'm not sure what, but I want to try and allow as many students as possible the opportunity in the future to get some of that on-the-job experience in our high schools. However, before we do that, we really do need to have a study on the safety issue.
Senator Clausen, follow up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for that explanation. I know that we have construction trades in our high schools. We have programs. We have many of our school districts collaborate with technical colleges in the trades. So I'm just wondering if you've looked at that and how much of a need is there actually for what I see here is directing for another program.
Senator Nelson.
Thank you, Senator Dames. Before I continue, one thing I forgot, and I think I forgot on my other bill too, I always want to thank my co-sponsors. And on this particular bill, I want to thank Senator Uyghur and Senator Ralph and Senator Isaacson for sponsoring this with me. Certainly, as you've heard today, there there is a great need for training in construction careers. And we do know that a number of our schools have actually lost a number of those career tech type courses. And we're seeing that there's a great need. We know that there are great jobs with good paychecks. And so the goal of this legislation is to make sure, as you've heard from our student today, that they're at least aware or there's an option for that. And so again, and the second part is an abundance of caution with a study to know, are there areas where students could be on a construction site? We don't know that yet. I'd like to know. Other states do that differently. This model was actually based on a piece of Colorado legislation that was incredibly effective in helping build the pipeline for construction careers.
Senator Kent.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Senator Nelson, thank you for bringing forward this bill. I think this is a great idea. Your testifiers, I think, did an excellent job of laying out the case of why this is needed and why this is a valuable solution. I will just say, when we heard Senator Swedzinski's bill, we thought that was a good idea in principle, but we see some concerns with trying to implement it into the existing infrastructure. And I just want to say that is my concern with this bill. Minnesota, as has become well publicized, ranks at the bottom nationally in terms of how many counselors we have taking care of our students and with the time and resources to advise them. It's recommended that there should be one counselor for every 250 students. The national average is 1 in 450, and in Minnesota, we're at about 800 students for every counselor that we have. So while this is a great idea and we need to do it, we just need to be realistic about all the things that they're able to do in that limited time. But I have a solution, and I'll be dropping a bill soon, and I look forward to having the opportunity to talk about how we can get more counselors and other student support professionals into our schools. Thanks.
Thank you.
Senator Nelson.
Thank you. Just some closing comments. As we heard earlier, we already do have legislation about career planning pathways. This can dovetail with that, and I would just draw the committee to the career advisement should identify high growth, in demand skills, trades, and include information on various career paths associated with jobs, salary profiles, and credentials, and other training desired by employers for those jobs. I think that's something that we can easily provide. I think it's our duty to make sure that our students have access to all of those things. And we're thankful that Tyler had a father who was able to bring that information to him. But we want to make sure every student has that. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Nelson. Any further questions? Seeing none, Senator Nelson.
I'd like to renew my motion that Senate File 293 be passed and laid over for possible inclusion in the omnibus bill. Oh, no.
Senator Nelson, it needs to be sent to, recommended to pass and re-referred to Jobs and Economic Growth
Yes,
Finance
I'd
and
like
Policy
to move that it be passed and re-referred to Jobs and Economic Development. Thank you so much.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The next item we have will be the report. Where are we at? Next, members, we are going to have a brief update on our 2017 Rural Career and Technical Education Consortium grants. We have Cliff Carmody, the Executive Director, and Tom Hoff, the Career Technical Project Coordinator from the Southwest Central Co-op. Gentlemen, welcome to the Senate and on into the hearing.
Thank you, Senator Dames. My name is Cliff Carmody, the Executive Director at Southwest West Central Service Co-op. I'm going to keep my comments very brief. We appreciate the time here today to share with you the results of a Rural Career and Technical Education Consortium that we started in 2017 as a result of a grant from the legislature. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tom Hoff. Tom can tell you more about the difference that this program in its early start has made for the students in our region.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today. We've heard a lot of really interesting testimony already about the importance of career and technical education.
If I could interrupt you for 1 minute,
Yep.
Mr. Hoff, if you could state your
Sure.
name.
Yep. My name
for
is
the
Tom Hoff. I am the Career and Technical Project Coordinator for the Southwest and West Central Service Cooperatives. We did have a video today, but unfortunately we'll have to have you watch that on your own time. The importance of the video really was that we can't always bring students and employers along with us, especially when it takes a big part of our day of travel from southwestern Minnesota. So the video really does speak to the impact that the legislation has had on rural employers and rural students. We were funded in 2017, and upon writing a grant to the Department of Education to access the funds, we really started rolling with this about a year ago. January 2018 was when we first put out an application for partnerships to apply for funds. You do have a few information sheets in front of you. One is a project overview, and that's useful for partnerships that are trying to form so they understand what the purpose of the legislation is and also how to access funds. If you notice the sheet that has the map with the dots on it, so prior to 2017, we did not have any shared CTE programs in our current technical education programs in our region. And we know that career and technical education is changing quite a bit. Back when I was in high school, back in the 70s and 80s, every small community was rich with vocational at the time, or career and tech ed programs. Many of our rural schools have no career and tech ed programs. I mean, absolutely none. And we know how difficult it is to get instructors for those programs, and we have declining school populations. So we feel like in our rural area, partnerships are going to be crucial to the growth or regrowth of career and technical education. So the grant funds require that there are at least 2 high schools involved and 1 business in the development of the program. And so you'll see, even in just a very short period of time this last year, how we have grown from no programs to 5 high schools serving 15 students to what we project at the end of this school year to be between 650 and 700 students served in career and tech ed programs that, excuse me, that would not have been served without this funding that you've provided. When I go out and visit with industry partners, every single sector is desperate for skilled employees. There's not one that doesn't have help wanted ads out there. That's especially true in manufacturing, healthcare, agriculture, construction. We've already heard, how many openings there are in the construction area. And so we've been very pleased with how this has been received. You'll see the list of new shared CTE courses and projects that have come about as a result of this funding. Now, many of these are listed one time, but for instance, nursing assistant and intro to medical careers, those new courses are being replicated all across our region, and so we probably have hired 8 or 9 new instructors just in the last year in the medical area. And when I go and visit with students and hear them talk about what this experience has meant to them, it's unreal how this has shaped their life. I mean, one course has provided them an opportunity to know what the businesses that they drive by every day do. And until we really make sure that those students are educated about what the opportunities are, it's going to be a very difficult task for us to retain those students to our region. We know that we have a huge out-migration of students from southwestern Minnesota after they graduate from high school, and we want to make sure that they understand that there are great opportunities. We've surveyed thousands of students over the years, and we know that about 70% of students say their primary influence on their future career is from their family and their friends. Unfortunately, their family and their friends aren't always aware of what the opportunities are as well. And so a lot of the discussion that's taken place prior to us speaking has been around how to create awareness through career counseling and other means to make sure students know that those opportunities exist. I think the primary reason why we've been so successful in just this first year is because of the partnerships that we have between businesses and organizations. We have 3 colleges that are very invested. We have 3 economic development commissions that are very invested. And in one class alone, our one Intro to Medical Careers class can end up partnering with as many as 25 healthcare businesses. And so we're really establishing some great relationships between high schools, the business community, and our technical colleges. I just did a quick count prior to this testimony and learned that over the course of this project, we've already had 188 students earn college credit, and those college credits came at no expense to them through the program. So I would open it up for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hoff, Mr. Carmody. I just want to thank you for your leadership and your innovation in this. And I'm glad to hear these results. We know that career tech education pays big dividends, and I just want to thank you for that. This was a Senate proposal that we were able to carry through and to get funding for, and it's rewarding to hear the good results that you have. So I want to thank you. Members, any further comments? Senator Dames.
Miss Chair, and you two folks, I'd certainly like to thank you for all the work that you did on this. I remember when we started talking, Senator Weber and myself and you folks started talking about this a few years ago, and it was kind of a dream at that point and kind of an idea, and you really turned it into reality. And I think this really goes to show, and I think this was really a good model that can be used in with some of the other co-ops and stuff also. It's worked very successful. So thank you very much. We do appreciate it.
Yes,
thank you. Mr. Hoff.
Yes, I appreciate that comment. We took tours to other locations to try and determine this model, largely to South Dakota, and it was nice to have the Department of Education in South Dakota arranged a trip of their superintendents to our region to learn about this program. I'm presenting at the state ACT conference this Friday, and we've presented this at numerous events, and it's been widely well received. And I think you're right, Senator Dames, this could prove as a very applicable model for a lot of rural areas.
Thank you, Mr. Hoff. Mr. Carmody.
Madam Chair and members of the committee, thank you. We also want to thank Senator Dames for his leadership. It's helped us with this project. I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you that not all of the challenges are solved. Transportation in rural areas is a challenge today. For the most part, students transport themselves. We have one district that chose to transport students as a result of a car accident that happened with students, and so transportation is a challenge. And we're challenged by the graduation standards and the number of credits that are taken, and so required by our high school students. It can create problems, so we have some ideas about that, and we'll be talking with you about those as we look at continuing to move this legislation forward. As was indicated, we are also, we consider this a pilot. We've been communicating and collaborating with the other service cooperative regions to see how we might be able to take this to a broader audience and really grow this program so that more students than just in our region have an opportunity to participate. So thank you very much.
Thank you, members. Any further comments? I just want to thank our guests today. I want to thank our members for your patience. We went a little long, and on top of that, you have a little bit of homework. Because of our technology issues, please take time to look at I think you'll be getting 4 links of excellent programs, and this is how we can learn and do even better by our kids. Our next meeting is Wednesday the 6th, during which time we are going to hear reading-related bills. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.